Have you ever noticed a strange paradox? Some of the smartest people we know, the ones with advanced degrees and brilliant careers, often struggle immensely with their personal finances. They might understand complex theories, yet their bank accounts tell a story of stress and stagnation. On the other hand, you might know someone who seems far more ordinary, who never discusses intricate market strategies, yet whose wealth quietly and steadily grows year after year. What explains this gap? The answer lies at the heart of a profound insight about money. Financial success is not a hard science. It's a soft skill. It has less to do with what you know and far more to do with how you behave. This isn't a lecture on advanced mathematics. It's a guide to human temperament. The goal isn't to arm you with complicated formulas you'll abandon in a moment of panic. Instead, it's to instill a small set of durable behaviors, habits so fundamental you can watch their effects unfold on your own statements. It confronts that frustrating feeling many of us have. You know the rules, but under pressure, you break them. And then you blame your strategy instead of looking in the mirror. To begin this journey, we must first recognize that we are often trying to play two completely different sports on the same field, with the same scoreboard. There are two profoundly different games when it comes to wealth: the game of getting rich and the game of staying rich. Confusing them is one of the fastest routes to financial disappointment. Getting rich often requires taking calculated risks. It demands optimism, a certain degree of boldness, and concentrating your bets on high-growth opportunities. It's the offensive sprint, the thrilling pursuit of a big win. But staying rich is an entirely different discipline. It is a defensive marathon. It's about survival, humility, and a healthy dose of paranoia. It's less about what you gain and more about what you don't lose. The history of finance is a graveyard of brilliant individuals who mastered the first game but failed catastrophically at the second. Consider the legendary trader Jesse Livermore, one of the greatest speculators of the early 20th century. He made and lost several fortunes, at times being one of the richest men in the world. His offensive genius was undeniable. He could read the market with breathtaking accuracy, but he repeatedly failed at the defensive game, taking on so much leverage that a single wrong move could, and did, wipe him out completely. He won many seasons but ultimately lost his career. This happens because the mindset for growth is often the opposite of the mindset for preservation. The audacity that helps you build a fortune is the very trait that can tempt you to risk it all. Therefore, a sound financial life must have two separate playbooks. Your offense might involve growth stocks or entrepreneurial ventures, but it must be balanced by a robust defense, a healthy cash reserve, broad diversification, and an aversion to the kind of debt that can force your hand. This defensive wall ensures that the next inevitable market shock or personal emergency doesn't compel you to sell your best assets at the worst possible time, undoing years of patient progress. Without this separation, people find themselves on a treadmill, where years of gains are erased by a single setback, leaving their net worth frustratingly stagnant. Once your defenses are firmly in place, you can confidently let the most powerful engine of wealth creation do its quiet, relentless work. This engine is compounding, and its fuel is time, not genius. The most potent force in finance isn't identifying the next thousand-bagger stock. It is earning pretty good returns that you can sustain without interruption for the longest possible period. The story of Warren Buffett is often misread as a story of investment wizardry alone. While his skill is legendary, his true superpower is longevity. Over 95% of his net worth was accumulated after his 65th birthday. His secret wasn't just being a great investor, it was being a great investor for 3/4 of a century. This simple fact cuts directly against the grain of our modern financial culture, which worships quick wins and overnight success. We are constantly bombarded with stories of people getting rich fast, which can make us feel like we're hopelessly behind. This feeling of being late creates a dangerous impatience. It pushes us to hunt for catch-up tricks and high-risk shortcuts, the very things that break the quiet consistency compounding requires. Every time you pull your money out of a solid, long-term plan to chase a hot new trend, you are effectively resetting the clock to zero. You interrupt the elegant, almost magical process of your money earning money on itself. The real skill here is behavioral. It is the emotional discipline to remain invested, to reinvest your earnings, and to let the base of your capital grow steadily year after year without heroic intervention. You can see this in any long-term chart. The line isn't straight, it's a curve that gets exponentially steeper over time. Your primary job is simply to stay on the ride and not get in its way. If the primary driver of results is this kind of persistence, it forces us to accept a statistical reality. Most of our individual efforts will be average. And that's not just okay, it's part of the design. This brings us to the power of tail events. In many complex systems, and especially in finance, a tiny fraction of inputs produces the vast majority of the outputs. This is often called a long-tail distribution. Think of a venture capital firm. A successful fund might invest in 100 different startups. Out of that 100, 90 might fail completely, returning nothing. Another 9 might do reasonably well, perhaps returning their initial investment. But one single company, the one outlier, might become the next global giant. That one tail event will generate more profit than all the other 99 investments combined, and it will be the sole reason for the fund's spectacular success. This pattern is everywhere. It's in the movie business, where a few blockbusters subsidize hundreds of flops. It's in the art world, where a single masterpiece can be worth more than 1,000 other paintings. And it is certainly true in your own investment portfolio. Over your lifetime, the bulk of your total returns will likely come from a very small number of your best performing assets. The rest will be mediocre, average, or even losers. The common psychological trap is impatience with this reality. We look at our portfolio and see a lot of assets that are just treading water. We get bored. We feel the urge to do something, to prune the underperformers and consolidate into what's working right now. This tinkering dramatically increases the odds that we will sell a future champion just before its breakout moment. The correct mindset is more like that of a patient farmer. You plant a wide field of seeds, knowing full well that not all will sprout. You don't get angry at the seeds that fail. You simply tend the field and give the strong ones the time and space they need to grow into mighty oaks. Your task is to diversify enough to survive the many small misses while you wait for the rare, game-changing hits. To ensure you can survive long enough for those rare outliers to appear, you must intentionally weave slack into your financial fabric. This slack is called a margin of safety, and it's one of the most powerful yet underappreciated concepts for navigating an uncertain world. It is the humble admission that forecasts are flawed and the future is fundamentally unknowable. Therefore, you must build a buffer between what you expect to happen and what could realistically happen. This isn't pessimism, it's a form of practical wisdom. When engineers design a bridge, they don't build it to withstand the exact weight of the expected traffic. If a bridge is rated for 10,000 tons, it is likely engineered to handle 20,000 or even 30,000 tons. That enormous gap is its margin of safety. It's the cushion that protects it from unforeseen stresses, calculation errors, or extreme events. In your financial life, this buffer is just as critical. It can take many forms: a substantial cash emergency fund, a diversified portfolio where no single investment can cause ruin, a low level of personal debt, and using deeply conservative assumptions when planning for the future. For example, you might plan your retirement assuming a 5% annual return from your investments, even though you hope for 8%. That 3% difference is your margin of safety. It's what turns a potential catastrophe into a mere inconvenience. We all know the pain of living without this buffer. A surprise medical bill, a sudden job loss, or a sharp market decline triggers a cascade of panic decisions. You're forced to sell assets at the worst possible moment, not because your long-term strategy was wrong, but because your short-term system had no resilience. A margin of safety is the antidote. It's the resilience you can audit by counting how few forced sales you make during times of stress. It is the space that allows your long-term plan to survive short-term reality. But a strong defense, while essential for survival, doesn't provide the fuel for growth. For that, you need to pull a lever that is almost entirely within your control. That lever is your savings rate. More than your salary, more than your investment returns, the percentage of your income that you set aside is the most direct and powerful determinant of your financial destiny. What you keep will almost always outrun what you chase. You could be the most brilliant investor in the world, generating 20% annual returns. But if your spending rises to meet every dollar of that gain, your net worth will remain stubbornly at zero. Conversely, you could be a completely average investor, earning modest returns in a simple index fund. But if you consistently save 25% of your income, you are mathematically guaranteed to build substantial wealth over time. A high savings rate accomplishes more than just the accumulation of capital. It creates optionality on demand. It is the ultimate expression of a margin of safety. When you save a significant portion of what you earn, you become less fragile. You are less dependent on your next paycheck, less tethered to a job or a boss you dislike, and far better equipped to handle life's inevitable surprises. The most common enemy of a high savings rate is lifestyle creep. As our income climbs, our spending tends to climb right alongside it, often invisibly. The slightly nicer car, the bigger house, the more expensive vacations. These upgrades stealthily consume our financial progress, reviving that familiar month-end anxiety, just at a higher income level. The solution is to make a conscious decision to cap that creep. By letting your savings rate rise in tandem with your income, you simultaneously expand your buffer, your choices, and your speed toward true financial independence. This is a metric you can track and control, watching your savings percentage rise and your cash balance grow steadier and more comforting with each passing year. So you have now secured a reliable source of fuel through savings and built a protective buffer with a margin of safety. But even a well-fueled, shock-proof vehicle is useless if you drive it into the wrong race. This brings us to a critical step: consciously choosing the game you are actually playing. The financial markets are not a single, unified game. They are a massive arena where thousands of different games are being played simultaneously, each with different rules, time horizons, and goals. A 25-year-old day trader using leverage to speculate on short-term price movements is playing a completely different sport than a 65-year-old retiree trying to generate stable income from dividends. A young couple saving for a house down payment in 3 years is on a totally different field than a 30-year-old investing for retirement in 40 years. A catastrophic mistake many people make is playing someone else's game without even realizing it. You hear a colleague bragging about the massive gains they made on a speculative biotech stock, and you feel a pang of envy. So you jump in, hoping for the same result. But your colleague might be single, with a high risk tolerance and decades to recover from a loss. You, on the other hand, might be supporting a family with kids approaching college age. You copied their move but failed to copy their circumstances. This kind of mismatch is a surefire recipe for disaster, almost always leading to buying high out of excitement, selling low out of panic, and a chronic gnawing sense of regret. The antidote, Housel argues, is to define your own game with absolute clarity before you ever make an investment. Take out a piece of paper and write it down. What is your time horizon? Is it months, years, or decades? What is your personal risk budget? How much can you emotionally and financially afford to lose without derailing your life? And, most importantly, what are your decision rules? Under what conditions will you buy, sell, or rebalance? By codifying this framework first, you create a personal anchor in a sea of noise. The frantic moves and breathless commentary of others become irrelevant because you know with certainty that they are not playing your game. You can then measure your success not by whether you beat the market this quarter, but by how calm your reactions are and how faithfully you adhere to your own well-thought-out plan. Even the most perfectly chosen game, however, is destined to fail if its rules are too psychologically demanding to live with day in and day out. This leads to a crucial, counterintuitive insight. In the world of long-term investing, being reasonable is far more effective than being optimally rational. A financial plan that is mathematically perfect on paper, but causes you to lose sleep at night is in practice a terrible plan. The reason is simple: you will eventually abandon it. Imagine an aggressive, high-return strategy that looks brilliant in a historical backtest. It promises the fastest path to your financial goals. But in the real world, this strategy involves gut-wrenching volatility. During the next market downturn, you watch your portfolio drop 40%, and the sheer anxiety becomes unbearable. You capitulate, sell everything at the bottom, and lock in a devastating loss. In that moment of panic, the best plan proved to be the absolute worst, because your own human nature made it impossible to execute. A far better approach is to choose a strategy that is merely pretty good, but that you can comfortably adhere to for decades, through bull and bear markets alike. This is the sleep well test. Can you live with this investment allocation through a severe market decline without feeling the overwhelming urge to hit the eject button? If the answer is no, it is the wrong allocation for you. The goal is to find a sustainable path, not necessarily the fastest one. To make this discipline practical, don't rely on willpower alone. Build a system that automates good decisions. For instance, instead of vaguely promising to buy the dip, create a specific trigger action fallback plan. If the market drops by 15%, the trigger, I will automatically invest an extra $1,000 from my cash reserve, the action. If I don't have the cash available, I will do nothing and stick to my regular investment schedule, the fallback. This kind of pre-commitment removes emotional guesswork from the equation and makes your reasonable plan incredibly durable. Once your rules are designed to be psychologically livable, you can begin to fundamentally reprice what market risk is actually charging you. Most investors experience market volatility as a fine, a painful penalty for having done something wrong. When their portfolio value drops, they feel punished as if they've made a mistake. This perspective is the root cause of the most destructive investment behavior, selling low. It creates a feeling of urgency to stop the pain. But there is a powerful reframe that can change everything. Volatility is not a fine, it is a fee. It is the predictable price of admission for the superior long-term returns that equities have historically offered. You don't get the reward of compounding without periodically paying the price of uncertainty and drawdowns. Think of it like the ticket to a great amusement park. You willingly pay the entrance fee because you know it grants you access to thrilling rides. The gut-wrenching drops on a roller coaster are not a sign that the ride is broken. They are an integral part of the experience you paid for. Market volatility is the same. It is the fee you pay to participate in the long-term growth of the economy. Once you internalize this fee, not fine mindset, your entire emotional response changes. You stop being surprised by market downturns. You stop feeling punished by them. You stop trying to perfectly time your entry and exit to avoid them, an effort that is almost always futile and counterproductive. Instead, you accept them as a normal, recurring cost of doing business. The practical application is to look at history, see the range of past declines, and mentally budget for them. By pre-accepting volatility as a known fee, you can finally close that frustrating gap that plagues so many investors, where their personal, realized returns lag far behind the returns of the very assets they own. With the turbulence of the market reframed as a predictable cost, we can ask a deeper question: what is the ultimate service this fee is supposed to purchase for us? What is the real product of wealth? The highest form of wealth is not a luxury car, a sprawling mansion, or a designer watch. The true prize that money can buy is control over your own time. It is the profound freedom to wake up in the morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. This is autonomy, and it is the ultimate and often most overlooked dividend that wealth pays. Many of us fall into a subtle trap as our income grows. We use our expanding resources to buy bigger and better things, chasing the fleeting high that comes with a new purchase. But this accumulation of stuff, rather than liberating us, often deepens our dependence. The bigger house comes with a bigger mortgage, higher property taxes, and more maintenance. The fancy car comes with steep insurance premiums and costly repairs. These status symbols, instead of providing freedom, can become gilded cages. They increase our monthly overhead, forcing us to keep running on the hamster wheel just to support the lifestyle we've built. We end up with more income, but paradoxically, less flexibility. The alternative path is to consciously redirect your financial energy from acquiring status to acquiring autonomy. Instead of upgrading your car, perhaps you build a 6-month emergency fund that gives you the psychological power to walk away from a toxic job. Instead of buying the bigger house, perhaps you invest the difference, pulling your financial independence date years closer. This is a tangible shift you can measure not just on a balance sheet, but in your daily life. You'll notice it as a growing number of obligations, requests, and demands to which you can comfortably and confidently say no. True wealth is when your savings grant you more control over your calendar than your cravings do. We have now identified the true target for our money, time and autonomy. But the path to this target is not a straight line. It is a winding road filled with unpredictable turns, which requires us to add a crucial ingredient to our mindset: humility in the face of what we cannot control. This is where we must confront the powerful and inseparable twin forces of luck and risk. So much of what gets labeled as skill in the world of finance is, upon closer inspection, the result of being in the right place at the right time. And conversely, so much of what gets condemned as failure is simply the result of an unpredictable risk materializing. Every outcome in life is a complex blend of your decisions and the random variance of the world. The great behavioral error is to create clean, simple narratives that ignore this messy reality. When an investment skyrockets, our natural tendency is to attribute it 100% to our own brilliance and foresight. When it plummets, we are quick to blame bad luck, a rigged system, or unforeseen events. This psychological bias, taking all the credit for wins and none of the blame for losses, is incredibly dangerous. The overconfidence born from a lucky success can lead us to take even bigger, more concentrated risks next time, directly courting ruin. The antidote is a dose of profound humility. Acknowledge the role that luck played in your successes. Forgive yourself for failures that were driven by genuine, unforeseeable risk rather than by poor judgment. Operationally, this translates into prudent risk management. It means capping your position sizes so that no single outcome, good or bad, can make or break your entire plan. It means avoiding the seductive trap of overfitting narratives to the past, like believing a particular CEO is an infallible genius and betting your entire future on their company. One bad roll of the dice, a scandal, a new technology, a regulatory shift, can shatter that entire story. Humility isn't about being timid, it's about being unbreakable. If the presence of luck distorts the lessons we learn from our own experience, then we must also handle the lessons of collective experience, history, with extreme care. Not as a rigid template, but as a source of broad context. The past is our only guide to the future, but it is an imperfect and often mischievous guide. A common analytical mistake is to treat history as a detailed blueprint. Investors will meticulously backtest a strategy over the last 30 years and assume that what worked then will work exactly the same way for the next 30. But the world is in a constant state of flux. The economic, political, and technological conditions that produce past results may never be repeated in the same combination again. The future will surely rhyme with the past, but it will not be a direct copy. Relying too heavily on a specific historical playbook leads to the creation of brittle financial plans that look brilliant in theory, but can shatter when they encounter new and unexpected conditions. Imagine someone in 2005 building their entire financial strategy around the historically unassailable assumption that national housing prices never fall. It was a perfectly sound premise, based on decades of data, until the moment it wasn't. A more robust approach is to use history not to predict a specific outcome, but to understand the range of what is possible. Instead of focusing on the average historical return of the stock market, study the wildest bull markets and the deepest bear markets. This gives you a much better sense of the emotional roller coaster you might have to endure. Use history to inform your sense of base rates and to build wide conservative ranges into your assumptions. Most importantly, bake adaptability into your rules. Your financial plan should be a living document, like a ship's log, not a stone tablet sent down from the mountain. With this historical context properly framed, you can finally anchor your day-to-day motivation in a macro-level perspective that is durable enough to sustain patience through the inevitable storms. This perspective is rational optimism. It is the learned ability to be a short-term realist or even a pessimist while remaining a long-term optimist. Our daily lives are a constant deluge of problems. The news cycle is a relentless parade of crises, conflicts, economic anxieties, and predictions of impending doom. This fire hose of negativity dominates our attention, saps our resolve, and can easily trigger defensive overreactions, like dumping all your investments in a panic because of a scary geopolitical headline. This is short-term pessimism, and to a degree it's often justified. In the short run, things can and do go terribly wrong. However, rational optimism looks beyond the immediate noise and recognizes a more powerful, longer-term trend. Human ingenuity has a remarkable and unbroken track record of solving problems. Over the long arc of history, we invent cures for diseases, we develop more efficient technologies, we raise standards of living, and we build more prosperous societies. Setbacks are frequent and painful, but progress tends to be cumulative and permanent. For an investor, this mindset is the ultimate psychological anchor. It allows you to expect and prepare for rough patches in the short run while betting confidently on human problem solving and economic growth in the long run. You can be cautious about the next 12 months while being fundamentally optimistic about the next 30 years. This dual perspective is what prevents panic and sustains the deep patience required for compounding to work its magic, allowing you to keep saving and investing right through the scariest of headlines. We have now explored a series of powerful mindsets. The final step is to distill all of this wisdom into a compact personal playbook that you can actually use and audit. The goal is to move from abstract philosophy to concrete, trackable action. Let's shrink these principles into 5 core behaviors that you can monitor in your own accounts, reducing your reliance on finite willpower and emotional whims. First, save automatically. This is the bedrock. Set up a recurring, automated transfer from your checking account to your savings and investment accounts. The most important financial decision should happen without you even thinking about it. Second, maintain a cash buffer. This is your personal margin of safety, your defense against being forced to sell your long-term investments to cover a short-term emergency. It is the shock absorber for your financial life. Third, define your game. Before you invest another dollar, write down your time horizon and your personal rules of engagement. This act alone will inoculate you against the dangerous temptation of copying others. Fourth, choose reasonable rules and build a system around them. Opt for a good enough plan that you can stick with over a perfect plan that causes you anxiety. Use trigger action fallback formulas to automate your responses to market events. And fifth, pre-accept volatility as a fee. Mentally frame market drawdowns not as a punishment, but as the known price of admission for achieving long-term growth. This compact checklist transforms vague advice into a personal operating manual, making your progress tangible and less dependent on emotional fortitude. Complex plans often lead to procrastination and inertia. The most powerful way to begin is to lock in one small, decisive move right now, so that the powerful force of momentum begins working for you, not against you. Set up a single automatic behavior today that aligns with the game you want to play. It could be initiating an automatic monthly transfer to your savings account, increasing your retirement contribution by just 1%, or setting up a small, recurring investment into a low-cost index fund. The size of the action is far less important than the act of starting. Commit that one action, then let time and consistency do the rest.